I actually pressed record this time. You'll be glad to hear.
Musical Talk, the UK independent musical theatre podcast.
Welcome to Musical Talk. I am sitting here virtually, of course, with my good friend Ryan. Hey Ryan, how are you?
Hello. I'm good as I can be coming through Skype.
Yes, I think it's a sound that our listeners are used to hearing, the wondrous audio quality of AirPods. I wanted to get you in on this episode because this episode we are celebrating Six, a show that I'm sure we all miss. I'm sure a show that you miss, Ryan.
Absolutely.
We're going to have two interviews. One is with Katy Richardson, who is the show's keyboard player and conductor and musical director, and she was also the associate music supervisor for the Australian run. And then we're going to talk to the icons themselves, Toby Marlow and Lucy Moss. Both are wonderful interviews. I can't wait for you to hear them. I wanted to have you on just to do a little banter, Ryan, because you are the megasix fan, aren't you?
Megasix fan. I will never get enough of Six puns. Surprisingly, since lockdown, the major life impact that I have had is I've not been going Six as much as I want to be. It's theatre and sort of anything that I used to do as a hobby or enjoyed has kind of taken a weird backseat, even though, I guess it's because all of my hobbies involve me going out and spending money.
Like the day we saw Six.
Like the day we saw Six, absolutely. I entered a competition very recently for Today Ticks you fill out a survey and you would have a chance to win you have the chance to win £100. So if I win £100 as soon as theatres reopen, which who knows when that will be.
It'll be one act of a Broadway musical and it'll be 3 shows in London.
Well, yeah, I will be spending it at Six.
So
appropriate. Is
Six the one show that you would go back to the minute this nonsense is over?
Yeah, the only other one in the West End currently, and I know people are going to think I'm like basic by saying this, but the only other one is Wicked. But in terms of shows, yeah, 100%. It's also one that I can listen to on repeat, and it's weird how little I've spoken during this lockdown because I'm struggling to form sentences right now. It is my number one to go back to.
Yeah, you actually helped out with some questions, so thank you for that. You gave some very good questions, which do get answered by Toby and Lucy later on. But I'm going to start by playing the interview that I did with Mike Dixon and Katy Richardson, talking about Katy's career, talking a bit about the Oliviers, and also talking about Six and what goes on tech-wise. I say in the pit, it's more on the stage, of the band of Six. So let's play that interview now. I'm here with Mike Dixon virtually. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Very good, Nick. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And we're also here with Katy Richardson, who is the MD of Six, which is going to be the topic of our conversation. Hi, Katy. Welcome to Musical Talk.
Hello, thanks for having me.
I wanted to get Mike in on this conversation because he probably has a lot better questions than I do. Tell us about yourself, Katy.
Yeah, I'm an MD. I'm the MD for Six in the West End and also the Associate Musical Supervisor for Six UK and Six in Australia, which still feels a bit mad to say.
This whole show is kind of mad to think about. How I've always said it, I think it's the biggest hit that Edinburgh has ever had. How far back does your involvement go with the piece?
So I've been involved for about 2 years. I joined before the UK tour, which included the Edinburgh Fringe version with the costume, sort of as we know it. So like the first professional outing. So it was right after they did the workshop tryouts at the Arts Theatre that I joined. So yeah, I was part of that crazy Edinburgh Fringe experience, which felt like being a rock star, to be honest. And yeah, I've been there ever since, with a quick gap where I went to do Dr. Dolittle with Mike, actually.
Which is kind of where we come in. I mean, I've known Katy as a young up-and-coming MD for a little while, and you'd invited me, Katy, hadn't you, to see you do something at Mountview?
It was actually with I did invite you to come see something when I was at Mountview.
That's right, but there was something before that. I know, but there was something before that, though, wasn't there, as well?
I met you at the Search for a Twitter Composer competition.
That's what it was, with West End producer. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yeah, yeah. And Katie, I mean, obviously, I know you quite well now, and because we worked together, you were my assistant musical director on the ill-fated Dr. Dolittle tour. But I'm always very keen to push new emerging talent in the musical director field, and you fit the bill in so many ways, because you are keen, you have a commitment to the work that you do, which is really good. You have an ethos that's really good. And so when Dr. Dolittle fell apart and you were able to go back to Six, I was so pleased. And then, of course, you should tell the story of what happened. I mean, some of the amazing things that have happened to you since you've been involved in Six.
Yeah, so the weirdest part about that was when I started back at Six after finishing the Dr. Dolittle tour, that it just by pure coincidence that my first day back at Six was the day that the Olivier nominations came out, and I was just watching them because I watch them every year, and then the first award nominated was Best Supporting Actress, and it was The Queens, and that was a day to start back at your old job for sure, because everyone was just basically screaming and crying in warm up. We couldn't believe it. Yeah, it was crazy, and then, you know, not 4 weeks after that, we were performing at the Royal Albert Hall, which was. And what
did it feel like, Katie? I mean, I've done it quite a few times, but what did it feel like for you?
Well, when you're used to performing at the Arts Theatre, which is 343, going to, I can't remember how big the Royal Albert Hall is, 5,000?
5,000 plus.
It looks pretty big by comparison. So there was that element of it, but also we felt like this plucky little underdog show that, you know, we weren't quite sure we had any right being there really. And then to sort of walk out and do your thing in front of everyone that you respect and admire in the theatre industry was fairly terrifying. But I always say to myself now, I've done that, and probably nothing else will be as scary as that again. So it's done. Yeah. But it was amazing. It was so amazing. And like, we were all just so happy to be there and couldn't believe it. And it was such a massive achievement for the show that it kind of didn't even matter to us really that we didn't win, because the performance was everything we hoped it would be. And we were lucky enough that the band who were called the Ladies in Waiting in the show was performing on stage as well. We performed live with the orchestra for backing, as well as obviously the cast performing live. And I know that there's not all of the shows that perform at the Oliviers get the chance to do that. So I will always be grateful for that.
Quite often, for ease of and to make things easier for the promoters and the producers of the Oliviers, you know, if there's a backtrack, they'll go for the backtrack, even though they've got a live orchestra there. So there are times when they would be pushing to use, you know, track, and they wanted you to use track with the live orchestra, didn't they?
Yeah, and they did. And in the end, we did use track, but the only reason was because Six has so many really electronic elements, like, you know, sound effects and stuff that are on track. So those are the only things that came out in terms of audio. But also we had this crazy time-coded lighting design, time-coded video design, like so all of that had to be done with track. But yeah, it was crazy. And my favorite story about that is that we all had our in-ears in with ourselves in our ears, obviously, and just the click. But Terry DeMarco, who's the bassist, I don't know what happened. Her in-ears worked in the sound check, they worked in the dress rehearsal, but we got out on stage at the Olivier Awards and they weren't working. No. She couldn't hear a thing, not herself, not track, nothing. And she did the whole thing by watching Alice, the drummer's hands. Because obviously the echo at the Royal Albert Hall is so massive. She said she just had to tune out sound and just watch her hand. And I had no idea at all until we got off stage and she told me.
There's the thing about the bass player and the drummer having to be in a kind of, you know, rock scenario, having to be so locked in together. But for that to be locked in without being able to hear what you're playing.
I know, and I couldn't tell at all. And I've watched it back, and I still can't tell. You can't hear anything wrong. She did it perfectly. Wow. Yeah, she really kept it cool.
technically, what's going on in the show? Because we're all musicians here, so we can get as geeky as we want. But what's going on with the electronic stuff and the processing and the effects and the live band and the vocal? What's going on, Katie?
So all of the vocal in 6 is live. There is no clicked vocal, which I think is a really major thing about the show that makes it so impressive. It also makes it so difficult for the cast. The most of what you can hear on track is either the horns, which are on track, or it's the electronic sound. So like the arpeggiator, if there's I'm playing a piano sound and there's also a synthesized like arpeggiator type sound that's on the track. There's lots of like whooshes, sort of glitchy sounds that you get in like the trap, hip hop influenced tracks, lots of auxiliary percussion, things like that. So that's what's on the track. Also, all of the lights in the show are time coded. So we have click track running through almost the entire show just to make sure that's all perfect. And then in terms of the band, we've got the drummer is on a electric drum kit, which is hidden in a real drum kit. So it looks like a real drum kit, but it's all electric. But it's great because it means that she has samples that she works through in the different songs. And also we have an entirely silent band, which is great for sound reasons. Then, we have the bass. She's got a number of effects pedals, including octave pedal. I should know all of their names, but I don't. But you should interview her. She'll tell you about them. And then Amy, the guitarist, has a big pedal board that has, your classic overdrive on lots of different levels for the different songs, clean sound. And she also swaps between her electric and her electroacoustic. And then there's me on keyboard. Luckily only one. There was talk of there being 2 stacked, but there is only one, which I'm pleased about because I feel like I have plenty to do. And then so I'm running the click. There's the main stage. I guess that's everything. It feels very, very tech heavy.
The whole purpose of things being on click is generally not so that the audience hears a load of other stuff. It's actually, as Katie said, it's so that video and lighting can all be tied in together. It's basically a way of holding everything together. And we, as a musical director and as a band, you have a constant tempo track going on in your head, and you're playing along with the tempo track, and then that tempo track is running all the lights and the video, so that everything links up and is on time. So it's quite a normal thing to do. What is unusual about 6 and also extremely impressive about 6 is that it is all girls.
It should be called 10 or 11 or however many people.
Well, it should be. It really should be because you guys in the band, Katie, are as intrinsic and as important as the 6 girls, as the 6 wives,
aren't you, Joan?
Joan, yeah, we all have character names.
That's right. Yeah. You're Joan, aren't you?
I am Joan. Yeah. I mean, it's really fun actually because we are interacting with them all of the time, and I think that's why it's kind of been like any other show where I've worked on, where it's not like we can slip out of the stage door in our blacks and sort of not be noticed. Like we get stopped at a stage door and asked to sign and asked for photos and things like that as well, which is really fun, but it's a completely new experience for me working on this show. So yeah, that is an element of it, but I just think it makes the whole thing really cohesive because there's no separation between the cast and the band, and we're all just part of one big thing. And so that's why it's so much fun to be involved with, because there's just no separation. We're just all on the same team, and I think everyone feels that way as well. And
also there's no pause, is it? There's no interval, there's no... It's incredibly, as an audience member, I've only been lucky enough to see the show twice. It's incredibly exhausting just watching these girls and this band who just don't stop.
Yeah, it's tough. I think I have 2 30-second breaks or 3 30-second breaks. And you'll see there's like set points that the band have time to drink water, and you'll see us all go at the same time.
Choreographed water drinks.
Yeah, neck as much as we can because it gets very hot. Yeah, and I think it really rattles straight through the show, and I think that's also why it's so fun I always say in the future when I go back to a normal 2-act musical, I'm going to be like, what do you mean there's a second act?
Funnily enough, I remember years ago when I did Joseph in 1991, one of the great things about Joseph was that it was a really short show, but we still had an interval. And yet here you are doing 6, and your show runs for, is it 85 minutes?
75.
75 minutes.
Yeah.
Including the mega mix.
Including
the
I think it's
mega
actually
mix,
77 maybe, but yeah, it's very short.
Would you like them, Katie, to add eventually? I mean, how would you feel if they were to add a real read section? Do you think it would aid the show, or are you happy as it is?
I think it would be really cool to have a couple of horns, because then we could be 6 and 6, which would be quite cool. But
6
I think
cubed.
Yeah. But I think because the staging is so set now, and obviously we've staged it a lot around the world now on lots of different size stages. The Arts Theatre in the West End being the smallest, actually. I think that I just don't think it would work with the staging now, and it's such a famous thing. I think the word iconic gets used quite a lot nowadays, but I think the simplicity of the staging, with all it is just the stairs with the lights at the back with the 4 of us on, I can't see how it would work. And from a directorial point of view, if we were to add 2 more. So I think maybe in the 25th anniversary reunion stadium tour, we could have a full horn section
at the Albert Hall.
I'm talking Wembley.
Okay.
Good idea. No, I mean, I think 6 is a really important piece. I do think that it will stand the test of time. I'm hoping that the next piece that they write is a sort of book musical type thing, but you will be able to talk further about that later in the podcast. But I was not just because I knew you, Katie. I was incredibly impressed when I went to see the show, because it was something new. It was something. It was taking the form in a different direction, and a direction that I quite enjoyed. I really, and I think seeing young people, so many young kids going to see the show and getting caught up with it is utterly brilliant.
And it's certainly better than Hamilton, and it's also shorter, which is a much nicer thing.
No, I'm the biggest Hamilton fan.
Well, I really think Hamilton is a fantastic show, but I would say that it's not our version of Hamilton, and it shouldn't be directly compared to Hamilton. But I think it's enough of a game changer in the UK to be compared to Hamilton. So
Toby and Lucy would be so happy to hear you say that, I think.
I absolutely love it. I think the lyrics are so clever. And I was with a friend of mine in New York in January. Remember when we were allowed out? And I played him the songs to this show, and he'd only heard of it. And he's a history buff, and he didn't crash the car. He was laughing so much. And not that it's funny. I mean, it is funny, but just because of the sheer multi-layered levels that the lyrics are, and the music is brilliant as well. But we'll end on this. What's so lovely about 6 are how the cast make it a unique performance in every country that it's playing in, on every cruise ship, in every city that it tours in. And that's why the megasix is such a kind of cult thing that people are so desperate to find, because these girls, not only in the band but also playing the wives, they add so much to it, don't they?
Yeah, and I think we really pride ourselves in it's different to how I've cast stuff before, where every single person that plays every role is different. So I think they're like 50% themselves and 50% the character, and they're really encouraged to do their own version of it and to not copy anyone that's done it before. And that includes the girls within the same cast that are covers. So every cover has their own costume, has their own character, even has their own, vocal riffs. Every actress has their own ones. And I think that is the thing that makes it really lovely, and it also keeps it so fresh for us.
And that whole thing is so important, because frequently we get American shows coming over to the West End, and there's a carbon copy meant to make it so that every place it went to, it was a new show and new, characterizations and all that sort of thing. But 6 seems to have taken that even further, and I really commend that. I think that's fantastic.
Katie, thank you so much for joining us for this a lovely episode celebrating Six. The elephant in the room, good luck with, we had you on last week talking about what you're up to, and thank you very much for sending that message in. I look forward to seeing Six again, and we'll all be back at the theatre soon.
Let's hope so.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you so
indeed.
much.
Let's hope so.
Mike Dixon and Katie Richardson, thank you for that lovely discussion. Ryan, what is it about Six that works?
I think the reason Six is so brilliant is I was thinking about this a few hours ago before we recorded this. It manages to be incredibly current and encapsulate sort of the fan bases from things like Be More Chill and Heathers and Dear Evan Hansen, and really give that fan base what they want and what they're looking for.
But also it's the British voice, because all those are things that come over. Whereas this, and I say this to Toby and Lucy, this is our show. I think that has a big connection to the audience as well. Sort
of adding to that, absolutely. It's also written in such a way that's so accessible to the theatre lovers of more classic theatre, because the lyrics in the book is so well crafted and so well put together. It's very rare that you get a show that comes along that is timeless. When somebody says timeless about a show, quite often I find the show to be very 90s and very dated, but I truly mean Six is timeless because of it's so hard to put what I'm trying to say, and I hope people understand, but exactly what I said before, it manages to understand today's audience and a younger audience just as well as it understands an older audience, or not even an older audience, that sounds quite ignorant of me, but an audience who prefers the complete opposite type of show, if that makes sense. It brings two polar opposites together. And you mentioned about the Britishing, and I agree. I think it's amazing that it's a British show and it's a British voice, but I have been a little bit naughty and listened to some of the audio bootlegs of other versions of the show around. It's hard. You start your fingers wander across the verse of YouTube when you're in lockdown for 8 weeks. But even though it's written, it is very British in terms of the way the jokes land and the way things are written, but it lands. It's so accessible not only to polar opposite audience members, but also cultures and diversities. And it might just be the most diverse and most inclusive show out there. That's my opinion of it.
How do you see the theatre industry adapting after this nonsense?
That's a really, really good question. In terms of there's the fundamentals like more in-depth cleanings, spacing of rows, all of that sort of stuff. But in terms of sort of maybe a point that people might not think of, I reckon there'll be a resurgence of shows that require smaller casts, i.e. Six, for example, is a small like cast compared to something of the likes of Phantom of the Opera. That's huge. I think there'll be definitely a resurgence of shows which require less people. I think that'll be...
You could get the return of Patti LuPone's one-woman show coming to...
my dream show. Just everything from Patti's career right from the beginning to right now. How many times can I sing Ladies Who Lunch in the space of 2 hours? I don't know, but find out.
Did you watch the Sondheim 90th tribute?
I didn't. This is such a controversial opinion, and I know I'm supposed to funding the arts and stuff like this with watching these online concerts, but it makes me quite sad in a little way that one of the fundamental reasons I love theatre is the experience of being there and being in the atmosphere of it, like hearing the orchestra tuning before the show starts, like people excited, like that whole environment is one of the main reasons I love the theatre. And
apart from Ghost Stories, which makes me cry,
everything that is happening right now in terms of theatre that's being put online is so exciting and so important and so wonderful that people are doing that. But for just as completely speaking from a personal standpoint, it does make me quite sad. It's like, I will watch it, hopefully, if somebody has either I don't know. Can we still access it?
Yeah. The whole thing was done as a Zoom conference.
Amazing.
So you get Patti LuPone in her house singing "The Ladies Who Lunch" with Meryl Streep.
That's fabulous.
It's just absolutely wonderful in the campusing in the whole wide world. Which it does lead us nicely into the interview with Lucy and Toby, because not only do they mention Queen Patti LuPone, but we also talk about the Bombshell concert that was streamed at the time of recording yesterday, I think in the States, and I hope hopefully it's available. So I do like the things that are coming out of this situation. Like last week, we put a wonderful podcast episode out with, I think, 18 guests on it, all expressing their advice and opinions and experience in this crazy time. Like we're all finding during this time, there were good things and there were bad things. One of the good things is Toby Marlow and Lucy Moss had time to do a wonderful interview with me, who, let's face it, I also had time, which is very important because there'd be no one to do the interview if that wasn't possible. Here is a chat that I had with the writers of Six.
Hello, I'm Toby Marlow.
And I am Lucy Moss. We're the writers of Six, the musical.
I said it earlier in the episode, it is the biggest hit that Edinburgh has ever provided from the Festival Fringe. And
I don't know, maybe Fleabag. I think Fleabag might be the actual. I think maybe we're second to Fleabag, which I'll take. I'll take being second.
I'm sure there's a television show in Six somewhere along the line. A question I have for you is: were you ever influenced by Horrible Histories?
Ooh.
Well, I, as a human being, as a human child, I quite enjoyed reading horrible history books, and it sort of was one of the things that led to me being vaguely interested in history, which led to me studying it at school, which led to me doing it at university, which is where I met Toby. So in that sense, I was. But in terms of actually writing Six, I feel like I don't think we actually knew that it was like a TV show and an amazing kind of like accessible historical resource in and of itself. So I feel like I'm going to say I was influenced as a child. Toby, were you influenced by Horrible History?
I had all the books when I was younger, and I just have remembered that now. So I loved Horrible Histories. I didn't know it was a TV thing, and it was only when it came, like when the first version of Ex-Wives from the showcase cast was put on What's on Stage, and all these comments being like, "Oh, this is just Horrible History," blah blah blah, and I was like, "Oh, I should probably check that out." And then I watched it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, fair point."
I'm sure you're bored of telling this story because we all know what these interviews are like. But give us, in a nutshell, the history of Six.
So the way it came about was Toby and I were friends at university. We'd been kind of like in shows together. In shows together and like working on different projects, but like never as writers. And we've been talking for a long time about writing a show together, particularly one that had lots of like meaty, funny parts for women in it. Because like from our experience and our friends' experience, we had lots of like female and non-binary friends at university who were like amazing performers, but like never got the chance to actually like show off their skills. So we were like, maybe we should write something for them. Anyway, and then our university's musical theatre society wanted to take an original show to the Edinburgh Fringe, because they usually took a kind of a musical that already existed every year previously, and they were like, this is very expensive. Maybe we should get someone to write it so we don't have to pay them for the rights. So Toby applied for that with some criteria that were like, Toby, do you want to explain what the criteria were?
The criteria was that we wanted it to be like pop music, because that was the music like me and Lucy loved to listen to and like going out dancing to and stuff, and I like to write. We wanted it to be something that played around with the form a bit, because like, first it's like the Edinburgh Fringe, like what a fun excuse to like do something that plays around with the form. And also my favourite musicals are the ones that are a bit more like conceptual, things like Company and Cats. And also like often I find that like something that alienates some people from musicals is like the kind of song scene structure and those transitions from naturalistic scenes into songs. And so we were like, ooh, what's like a fun way we could like have music in this show without like, well, let me tell you something about that, bling, and then into a song. And then we wanted to have something that, as you said, had like an all-female non-binary cast or a majoritively female non-binary cast because of the reasons that Lucy said. We wanted to like showcase our friends' talents, and we felt there was like a dearth of like, you know, good, meaty, funny parts for those kinds of performers. The last one was that we wanted to be a famous subject matter because obviously going to the Edinburgh Fringe, where there's like 3 billion roughly shows, there's just so much going on. We thought, like, you know, if we have like a fairly well-known subject matter, maybe there's like a chance that, you know, more than one person will come along and see it. And so then thinking about, you know, famous subject matters and, you know, groups of like women in like history and fiction and stuff, the 6 Whys seemed like a pretty obvious choice with that criteria. And so that's kind of how we settled on that subject matter.
And then from that, the kind of like Toby had a sort of a sudden like eureka moment where he was like, wait, if it's a pop concert, then there's a reason for there to be songs, and there could be a girl band because the 6 Wives of Henry VIII are a group, and that means that we can fit it into an hour and it can be an interesting form. Anyway, so then we took the show to the Edinburgh Fringe, just with our friends performing in it, and like, you know, us rehearsing at our other friends' like house, and just like, you know, the costumes were, you know, the budget for the costumes was probably like £100 or something.
Putting on a show.
Yeah, literally just like whacking something together, like having a laugh, not thinking anything of it. And then, yeah, we were at Edinburgh Fringe in 2017, and then people started selling out, and we were like, oh, this isn't just our friends coming. Like, who are all these people and why are they here? And then, like, producers were coming, and then all this kind of stuff happened. Anyway, and then from the Fringe, we ended up getting our producing team that we have, who are amazing now, and that led to some workshops in London, professional ones, and then to a kind of UK tour, which turned into a long-running West End sort of what's it called, like open-ended run, which then led to kind of going to Chicago, and then a US tour, and then into New York, and then Australia, and all over the place. And
you've kind of outlined the dream development for anyone ever wanting to write a show. Does it ever feel that you haven't quite woken up from this dream?
Yeah, I mean, although right now it sort of
I know we're all in a very long nightmare at the moment, but
yeah, like
putting that aside,
we've been saying for like years that it feels like because of the way it's been such a wild kind of roller coaster and just been building and building. We've kind of been saying, oh, we keep like waiting for it all to disappear and us to have to go and get real jobs. And so in some ways, you know, the last few months of the theatre being shut down has sort of meant like, oh, maybe that is so sort of has happened in a certain way. So yeah, it constantly feels like completely surreal, completely like we're just being like, I don't know, like swept along by the tidal wave that is our life, and that is the show. The show's sort of become this like, you know, beast of its own, like to mix metaphors, and I don't know, yeah. So we constantly feel like, is this really happening? Like, what's going on? Like, how is this? Is this our life? Like, what's
like
happening?
Being the second youngest director ever on Broadway, Lucy?
The youngest female director.
That's it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Toby, Katie said Katie said I have to mention the name Patti LuPone to you, and you have to tell me a story.
Oh my gosh, yeah! Oh my god, well remembered, Katie. It's not that interesting a story. It's basically so we were nominated for some Oliviers back in the day when theatre existed, and we had this like luncheon for nominees, and I'm pretty sure this is the story she means. And basically we like, you know, dressed up a little bit and like went to this fancy lunch and like did some like press and had our picture taken and everything. And like Patti LuPone was there because she'd been nominated for Olivier as well. And then this lovely producer guy, Chris Harper, who we know, kind of came up to and was like, darling, Patti LuPone just spoke to me. She said she's obsessed with your shoes and she wants to meet you now. And I was like, oh my god. And then he like tried to like drag me from the other end of this room to like where Patti was. And then we kept getting like stopped by other people that wanted to like talk about Six and his show Company and all this stuff. And they like were like get these like mini conversations on route to try and find Patti. And by the time we got to the other end of the room, Patti had left. And it was so sad. I never got to meet her. I never got to compliment my shoes. But I'm pretty sure is that the story that she meant?
I think it was. I think that
I don't have many other Patti LuPone stories.
Yes, that is the story. This isn't something I get to say to many musical talk guests. You've been in Vogue.
Yeah,
so silly. Wait, the funniest thing is that on Toby's Wikipedia page, Toby has a Wikipedia page and I don't, and if that's not the patriarchy, I don't know what is. But anyway, on Toby's Wikipedia page, it says under the personal life section, it just says the sentence, Marlowe is openly gay, and then there's like a link on the word gay, and then like a little like reference thing, and if you click on the reference thing, it says like Vogue. It's so funny. The reference.
Via Wikipedia, Vogue magazine outed me. Now everyone knows that I'm openly gay. People know that I'm choosing to be gay and live a gay lifestyle. It's just mortifying.
Toby, we know that you stepped in on a Sunday and did 2 shows, which is amazing in itself. If you were,
you weren't there.
If you were a wife or a queen yourself, what musical inspiration would you choose, and what colour would you choose for the pair of you?
Oh my god, that's a fabulous question. As in, like, if I was playing one of the queens and got to like choose my costume, like who would I be like inspired by in the pop world kind of thing? Oh my god, I would love to be a Lady Gaga-esque inspired one. So like a bit like I don't know what era of Gaga. Do you know what? I love the current era of Gaga. I want to be Lady Gaga in the Stupid Love music video inspired, and I have to think about which era of Lady Gaga I'd like to be. But I'd like my colour to be like pastely pink. I think it'd be cool, and like black.
Okay, wait, I really want to answer this question as well.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking. I think I would like to be a like Christine and the Queen style queen, and I would like my colour to be neon yellow. So I'd like it to be a little bit like more like androgynous-y, like suity, like a suit version of Gabby's costumes. But yeah, like Christine and the Queen, like kind of like short like hair and that kind of like musical moment, I think would be the one that I would want as a queen.
Because
Lucy, we did like a Battenberger together.
I know, a Battenberger.
Because what's great about Six, about the way you've shaped it, whether this was intentional, I don't know, but as it goes on through its many years that it will play everywhere, the cast and I presume I guess the instrumentation, could that change in the future to what, you know, we're obviously going to have massive new pop stars coming in 5 years' time. Would you be willing to put those changes into the show as it develops?
Yeah, totally. Like, I think, you know, something we really encourage with the show is to make each performer, not just in terms of like each queen and character, but each performer in whichever location they're doing it, including like alternates within the same company. We try and make them be their own version of the pop star, like take references from their own kind of queen. So for example, like our Anne Boleyn, our first London one, Millie, was kind of a little bit more like Lily Allen, Kate Nash, but then our Broadway one, Andrea, is like, oh yeah, I really take inspiration from Billie Eilish, and they have like completely different energies. And I think we would definitely be up for like in the future, like, I don't know, if someone comes along and like changes everything like Billie Eilish did, then we'll have to like go in and like change bits and bobs. I think that'd be really cool.
But also in terms of like the instrumentation, the way the music sounds, I feel like I'm so happy with it, and because I feel like the sound in Six, like it pop sounds completely different now to what Six sounds like, you know, and Six, like the musical references in the songwriting is like, it's very much like chart pop music from like 2009 to like 2014, you know, it's like that era of like the glory days of pop bangers, you know, and like when like Katy Perry and Beyonce's like 4 album and all that stuff. And so I felt like the instrumentation like really sounds like that. And I felt like if we tried to make it sound like too cool and like modern, we'd like lose the campness of it and the fact that like we're referencing that style of pop, you know.
The kind of Max Martin hit days.
That is us boldly being like, yeah, we're trying to emulate Max Martin songwriting in our songwriting. Yeah, no, but you know what I mean. But yeah, so I love the fact that it sounds like the music sounds like Max Martin pop bangers meets the harpsichord.
I mean, the future of Six is, I guess, something you're always thinking about. It's very, I mean, I feel ashamed to say I learnt more about obviously Henry VIII and of course the wives of Henry VIII when I saw Six than I knew in my life, which is great. Would you look at this show as being available for schools in the future or amateur societies? What do you think of that?
Oh my gosh, definitely. That's the my like number one wish in the world is to go and see a school production of Six. I think it would be the most fun. And I'm going to go and heckle. No, I'm kidding. It would be so fun.
Just go and give notes.
Yeah, they'd be like, great. I think we should talk a little bit more about how Catherine. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I think we would love that, and I think like as and when we can do that based on, I don't know how these things work, and producers have fancy knowledge about all of it. But yeah, we would love to see like as many like school productions of it as possible.
Do you guys have a future book musical in you?
It's a great question.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of like, working on in a few different like things at the moment, like musical projects, some of which, have, scripts, some of which might be a bit more like conceptual, and I think we'd love to have a go at doing one at some point, but we also love the idea of like collaborating with other people because, obviously Six was just written by the two of us and we did the book for that. But it'd be really fun at some point,
And what was the biggest change that we as audience members will never hear in Six? That a cut song or something that was something that changed dramatically, either in the writing or the rehearsal process, or something that maybe a cast member came up with?
I mean, I think it sounds kind of weird. I mean, there's no cut songs from Six except for maybe we did a slightly different version of the megamix like at one point, but it had like slightly different. But really, like the thing that's weird about it is that like when we first wrote it, I mean, things have changed a lot since then. We like changed, like for example, like I Don't Need Your Love. Like we wrote a whole new kind of like middle eight section and like changed the lyrics and changed the concept, and fleshed out the concept. But like if you compared the show now to the very original show, I think you'd be more surprised at how similar it is than different. So yeah, we don't really have like missing material because we kind of just like wrote it so quickly and just like it sort of happened before it was sort of I don't know. Yeah.
We used to have a line about boiled goose in it.
We did. No one will ever hear that one, sadly.
That one got cut, sorry.
And at what point did you know that Six was an unstoppable force, or are you still, waiting for that moment?
I think it's very much stoppable.
Yeah, it's been very good.
I don't know. It was a bit non-stop, really, from when it got picked up by the producers. I guess like I've never thought of it as like a non-stoppable thing because, as Lucy said earlier on, it's like until recently the whole vibe has been like, oh wow, this is like such a fun thing that we're doing with our lives. Like it must be ending soon. And obviously there'll be a time when the show closes and it was like a lovely thing that we all did, blah blah blah. But I don't think that was a moment when I kind of realized, when I kind of thought this is going to run forever.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it will, and B, it isn't at the moment.
Well, I like to think it will because, you look at some shows and they just never seem to disappear, which is great.
It does. That'd be lovely. Lovely, bro.
How was the Broadway experience, bringing it over there and rehearsing it and seeing how the Americans operate compared to other productions that you've worked with, Lucy and Toby?
Yeah, it was, I mean, so cool. It was such a blessing. And I think it was a little bit overwhelming when we first got there, just because the like hype surrounding musical theatre. I mean, it's wild in London, but it's like really wild in the US. And so like stuff like going to like Broadway Con and people having like made all this like fan art and stuff, and like the like our amazing like American like PR team like escorting us around places and us being like, oh, this is really serious. And similarly, like in the kind of tech process on Broadway, the way in which their kind of unions operate mean that there's so many more like rules and regulations, and you have to sort of really be like aware of those and make sure you don't like ask the wrong person to move something at some time. And there's a kind of like like chain of command and stuff, which was quite like overwhelming for for like, you know, particularly for me and Jamie, my co-director, to kind of try and navigate as a sort of like tiny little British children in the room. But I think what was super cool is that we already, because we'd had developed the show with this cast and a lot of company in Chicago. What was really cool is that we got to it was like we all sort of knew each other and knew what was going on, so it was very like supportive atmosphere, and everyone was just like super excited to be there and felt super grateful to be there. So yeah, it was cool. It was a lot, and seeing the show like on a Broadway stage and playing to audiences for a month before the lockdown happened was just like, yeah, it was such a dream and such a privilege.
I was there in January, and I was there the day they were putting the marquee up, which is very exciting.
Oh, cool!
And I just, you know, I'd love to see it there, and I can't wait to see it again when it comes back here, because it's such a joyous show, and it's so cleverly written. I've told this story already on the episode when talking to Katie. I played it to my friend in New York who I was staying with, and he nearly crashed his car. He was laughing so hard at the songs and saying that the multi-layered historical references in this are so clever, and the pop references and the tunes are excellent. I cannot give the show enough praise. I'm sure you've heard it all before. The last thing you want to hear is someone else harping on you about how good 6 is, but it is excellent. It's a real breath of fresh air. At a time when there weren't really any great shows coming along. And that's what's, you know, this show does what musical theatre... I don't think I've ever seen anything like this since Wicked, possibly Hamilton. But Wicked was the kind of last big fan show. And then 6 came along, and it's like, yep, we can do it too. This is our art form as well.
Oh my God. That's really kind of you. Wicked. Lol. I love Wicked.
But yeah, guys, thank you so much for taking time out of... sitting down in your house and talking to me, because it's been a dream episode for me to do this, and we look forward to the day we can all go and lose our head again at Smash. Not Smash, sorry, at 6. I was thinking about the live stream that happened yesterday. Smash is great as well. We've but thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you in the theatre soon, I hope.
Yeah, and thank you so much for saying such lovely things. And I hope we all get to go and see musicals again soon. Yeah. That'd be really lovely.
Toby Marlow and Lucy Moss, thank you so much for joining me, and good luck, and we'll have you on again soon, I hope.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
My thanks to Toby Marlow and Lucy Moss there, and thank you, Ryan, for joining me for this lovely episode of Musical Talk. It's a shame it couldn't be number 666, because that would have been A, a bit ominous, but B, quite fortuitous. Instead, it's number 671, so there's a 6 in it somewhere, which is good.
That's good.
And I guess if you add 6 and the 1 together, you get 7. So there you go. Or if you have the 7 and you minus 1, you get the 6. I think jet lag. I think the lockdown has got to me. So I'm going to stop talking now. But Ryan, thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you soon, because I think there is good news coming, that the things are starting to change. Whether it'll be in a theatre or a theme park, I don't know. But I guess the nice thing is, the kind of Inside Number 9 style twist to this, is that there are 6 participants in this episode, which is really nice. So thank you, Mike. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Toby. Thank you, Katie, and me for this episode. And we'll see you soon. For more information about Musical Talk, please visit our website at musicaltalk.co.uk. You can email us at feedback@musicaltalk.co.uk, listen to past episodes on iTunes and YouTube, and follow our social media channels on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Ryan, for the record, just waved, because apparently you can hear that on the radio.
I forget.
6! Go on, Ryan, do it.
I'm on the spot now. I'm trying to... I don't have perfect pitch. I'm panicking. Oh.